G'day, welcome to Oly35mm, user-based, quasi-empirical, cheap and cheerful videos on Olympus 35mm cameras. And the 35mm camera I would like to share with you today is the Olympus AZ4 Zoom. Now this was built in conjunction with Ricoh, and Ricoh actually brought out their own model of this called the Ricoh Mirai, or Mirai, M-I-R-A-I. Now this camera does look a little bit different to this, but it looks, it's basically got a different plastic shell, but it looks similar enough for the two to get mixed up. So much so that, a bit of trivia for you here, that in the 1989 Tim Burton Batman movie, the internet pundits believe that the AZ4 was actually used by Bob the Goon, who was at Gotham City Hall taking photographs, popped around from a pillar while Vinny's out there talking to the press, and snaps away with an Olympus AZ4. Sorry pundits, it is not correct. It is actually a Ricoh Mirai, and you can actually tell that because there's a bit of product placement where there's a big R where the flash is supposed to go, and Ricoh don't even have that on the production model, so obviously it was designed for the actual movie itself. Okay, so enough trivia. What have we got? 1989, as we said. This is a very important camera because it is actually the precursor to the much underrated, and by me much loved, Olympus IS series. Basically the technology that went into this then went into the IS series and then lasted another decade. So what do we have here? We have a 35 to 135mm 4.2 to 5.6 lens. In fact, it goes up to somewhere between 22 and 32 if you look at the program shift charts. It has a whopping 32 seconds through to 2,000th of a second shutter speed range, and as I said before, it's program shift. You can actually, if I swing it around, you can actually use these buttons to actually change the program shift to whatever aperture or shutter speed you would like. Okay, so what do we have on the top here? We have an LCD screen, and between the viewfinder, and this is an SLR camera, so what you see is what you get through the screen, like you do with other SLRs. Between the LEDs in the viewfinder and the LCD up here, it pretty much tells you all of the functions. Inside, aperture, shutter speed, focus, focus lock, flash, flash charge, flash acknowledgement, as in the correct exposure. There's a couple of other bits and pieces in there that I've forgotten at this point in time. The LCD then looks after some of the functions. It shows you when you have continuous shooting, when you have spot metering. It shows you the focus when you're in manual focus. Yes, there is a manual focus mode with this, and a few other bits and pieces when the cartridge is empty, so forth and so on. Okay, so we have off on macro, and the macro then takes your lens from a 1.2 meter closest focus distance down to 49 centimeters, and you cannot use the flash in the macro mode, only from 1.2 meters through to a working distance probably of about 8 meters or so. Your program shift, as I said before, you have your shutter button, you have a reset button, so when you've played with all of these functions and you've broken it, all you have to do is press the green button and it resets everything for you. There is your zoom button there, wide tele control. But it actually also doubles if you press a little switch on the bottom, which I'll show you in a little while, and you set that to manual focus and press in the manual focus button while you're moving the control, you can actually manually focus, and like I said, you get a visual indication up here on the LCD screen. Okay, so we have our autofocus. This also will throw out an AF assist light when it's too dark as well. there is a, I didn't show you, I'll just swing this around. There is your flash button. There is a spot metering button, and if you take this off, there is a connector for the accessory L30 flash, and don't you love the fact that it's not a standard hot shoe? I've never seen one. I'm guessing 30 stands for a guide number of 30. That would be my guess. Okay, so swinging back around the front, watch this flash. Let me show you that again. Don't you love it? Okay, so there's your flash. Like I said, usable for about 1.2 to 8 meters if you're using a 400 ISO film. Around the side, you actually have the information about what the lens is, but if you actually clip open this little fella here, you actually have some indicators, and let me grab my Olympus pen here, and you will see, I'll just stand up here, you have your continuous and single drive mode, you have your exposure lock, you have double exposure, there's a double exposure there, you have your exposure compensation, which is plus minus 4 stops, and you also have your rewind, so if you want to rewind halfway through the film. Okay, on the back, there's not a real lot to be seen on the back. It has a quartz date function on it. It also has a film window, and I've left a film in there just so you can see that there's actually something in there, and that's about it for the back. Obviously the viewfinder with all of the LEDs, as I said before. Okay, so I think I've told you all of the features that I can think of. Anyway, the handle, by the way, adjusts in 15-degree increments. You just press this button in here, and it will move up and down. And the idea is you hold it like so. And it's actually quite comfortable to use. Probably not the most comfortable I've ever used, but it's not bad. Unfortunately, it's I'll just press this in to get it here. Unfortunately, it's quite heavy. It's actually about 10% heavier than the IS3000, which was the heaviest of the IS series. So around about 1,050 grams or somewhere thereabouts, I think. 1,040, 1,050, whereas the IS was only about 950. It is fairly comfortable in the hand. You can operate it as a one-handed unit, especially with this strap on there as well. It's probably best to use it two-handed just because of the weight. There's, oh sorry, actually what I did forget to tell you, I knew there's a couple of buttons on the bottom. There's the there is an indicator, an audible indicator button, so you can turn the audible indications off, and there's your autofocus and manual focus switch when you wanted to go to manual focus, and there is a tripod screw mount there. Sorry about that, I did forget to tell you about those. So yeah, what were we saying? It's reasonably heavy. It really is two-handed operation rather than single operation. You can get away with it. There is a self-timer there as well, which I'd also forgotten to tell you about. Image quality. I like this camera a lot as far as image quality is concerned. It's almost as good as the 1000 series IS, I think. It has a very similar focal length range. But it's not as versatile, of course, because you've got sort of that PASM setting on the 1000 series. But the image quality is good. Usual story with Olympus: sharp, contrasty, renders colours well. Really is a treat, which leads me to being very frustrated because I've only ever run one roll of film through this, and I thought, you know, coming up to the end of Oly35, I'm going to run another roll of film through this because it really was a lot of fun, and lo and behold, the mirror's locked up on it. That's what you get for having old cameras, I suppose. They tend to break themselves. I'm not going to get it fixed. It's not economically viable. So a little bit of a disappointment. Everything else works a treat, and no matter what I do, bar bouncing it off the ground, which of course is something I would never do, I cannot get that mirror to budge. So that's a real disappointment. Okay, so that was a lot of burbling over one camera, but I think it's a really important part of Olympus history, slash Ricoh history, and a really important segue, if you like, for film cameras from the 80s into the 90s. So that's your lot for today. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye.